How's it going, guys? AnxiousCynic back again with another Blender tutorial. So last episode, the first episode, was a long and tedious one about how to get everything set up in Blender, but hopefully you got that going, and now we can move on to the fun stuff. So the first thing we're going to do here is get rid of some of the things that we don't need, and that's basically just the cube. We can get rid of the light here as well. Basically, I'm just selecting them, and if you followed my tutorial last time, I'm using left click. For you, it may be right click, so just keep that in mind. But I'm just selecting them and hitting the delete key on my keyboard. You could also use the buttons over here, I believe. If I click delete on this and hit OK, then you can do that. Or you can also hit the X key on your keyboard. I think that will also do it. Alright, so I'm going to leave the camera because we could spawn in a new one, but we got one, so we're going to keep it. Okay, so we've got our scene cleared out and we're ready to import our world. So what I'm going to do is open up the JMC to OBJ program that we downloaded from episode 1. So here's my JMC to OBJ file that I have, and it's an executable jar file. If you don't have this icon right here, the Java icon, you may want to right click and go to open with and choose, like if you don't see this Java platform, then you may have to choose default program and tell it to open with Java. I'm not really sure if that's something different for everybody or if it's just going to come that way, but just keep in mind if it doesn't give you the option to just open it with Java, then that's what you'll need to do, I think. Anyway, for those of you who've got it all set up, let's go ahead and double click on that and bring up the program. And I'm just going to maximize this so that we can see everything. And what you get is this kind of odd looking interface. So first thing we want to do is choose a world. And what I'm going to do is click on this icon over here, the three dotted icon right here by the browser. So once you're in your Minecraft save folder with all of your Minecraft worlds, you're just going to pick the one that you want. For me, it's this one, and I'm going to click choose save folder. And what that does is it tells the program that this is the one we want to load up. And then once we do that, we can click this load button. And when I click that, we get the world. And of course, it's centered around where I last logged out. So if you're moving to Blender from Minimator, then you're pretty familiar with how Minimator's scenery importer works. And this is pretty much the same, but it's just a little bit more robust, as is everything with Blender. So I'm just going to left click and drag out the area that I want. I'm pretty sure right around here is going to do. And so you get this selection here, and this is all that I want, but we can't see the verticality of our selection. And what that is how far down, like what level we're going to be importing. Because as it is, it's going to go from the floor. If you notice this up here, it says floor dash ceiling. Floor is set to 0 and ceiling is 256, meaning it's going to import everything from the bedrock all the way up to the highest point in the map. We don't want that, so what I'm going to do is bring the floor up, and I'm pretty sure I have an idea of how far I need to come up, but just to show you guys an example, I'm just going to say, let's say 75. And as you can see here, we get all these gray areas, and what that means is these are the blocks that are going to be excluded from the selection. We don't want that because a lot of our scene is actually taken out now. So what I'm going to do is just click this down arrow and keep going down. And just keep going until we get it exactly where we want it. So here is pretty good. We got everything we want. But just to be sure, I don't want to leave anything out. So I'm going to go down one more block, maybe 2 or 3. It really depends on what your scene is and what you're trying to do. This is just the one I'm going to use for the example. But I usually like to go down a little bit further just to make sure I get everything that I need for my scene. And then we're going to go up to export. Now notice I didn't bring the ceiling down because I don't really see any need to do so. But you may need to do that depending on what you're trying to import. So leave that to your discretion. Anyway, I'm going to go up to export here. And we get this new dialog box, and I'm not really sure what I may have customized at this point after looking into tutorials and things like that. I'm not really sure exactly how this is going to come for you, but you can look at this and see how I have it set up. What I do have ticked is create a separate object for each material and do not allow duplicate vertices or vertexes. By default, this program comes with the pre-scaled textures to 1x, which is pretty much what you want it to be on, so you can leave that alone if it is set to that by default, which I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, the create separate object for each material basically means that all of your grass will be its own object, all of your stone will be its own object, etc. In your scene, so that if you need to move things around or change things up or whatever, you'll have more control rather than having everything be one big object, as it is in Minimator. So that is actually the difference. If you're coming from Minimator, you know that if you import scenery, you can't edit anything within that scenery. Well, that's not the case in Blender because of the way this works here, especially with this option ticked. Do not allow duplicate vertexes is basically a thing within Blender where each object has points on it and you can duplicate those, and I don't really know if it causes much of an issue, but I think it's just extra points for the program to keep up with and can cause you some undue performance hitches. So what we're going to do now, I'm not really sure if you have to do this every single time for every single project, but I generally do it because I use different folders and whatnot, and I want the program to know where to collect these things. So you go over here to export textures from, and you have Minecraft or custom resource pack. I've never really tried using a custom resource pack, so for me, I'm going to click Minecraft. For you, you can experiment or look up another tutorial that's more in depth on this program. So I'm going to click Export Textures. So this is the folder I have set up for my project. As you can see, there's a text folder there. This actually wouldn't be here. The only reason that's there is because I already went over this step before. But when you go into this folder, like I want to have this here, so I'm going to click Select Export Destination, and then the program will immediately begin to export that. And as you can see there's a percentage and it's going to go up, and this can take a little while. Okay, so that finished, and now we have the textures exported, and now we want to actually export our scene. So this button here, the export button, we're going to click that, and then we get this dialog box, and as per usual, we're going to just navigate to the folder that we want to save our scenery to. All right, so I'm in my folder, and I'm just going to name it. I'm going to call it tutorial scene, and then I'm going to hit Select Export Destination. And there we go. That's actually a lot quicker. The textures take the longer amount of time, oddly enough. But that should be it. So we're going to close out this program and go back into Blender. All right, so here we are in Blender, and now we want to import our scenery. So what you're going to do is go over to File. You're going to come down here to Import, and this dialog is going to pop out here. And we want to go down here to Wavefront, and in parentheses, you'll see that it says .obj, which is what our scenery file is. So we're going to click on that. So we just navigate to where our file is, which is in this folder here for me, and I'm going to click on the tutorial scene.obj. You also have this MTL file. I'm honestly not sure what that is or what it does, but we don't need it. We're just going to go with the OBJ. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to click Import OBJ. And here we are. It imported our world, and this is our scene, and it looks glorious, and from what I can tell, we got all the parts that we wanted for the most part anyway. And yeah, so the first thing you'll notice is this looks kind of weird, doesn't it? It looks not exactly how you would want it to be. Well, first of all, we're looking at it in the solid view. So what that means is Blender has different view types that you can view the scene. You can view it in wireframe, which is showing you just the lines of the objects and what composes the scene. And then you have solid, which is what it was, and this shows like basic shapes and colors. And you have texture. There's a subtle difference between texture and the next one we're going to go to, which is material. And when we go to material, so as you can see, changing it to the material setting kind of made it look a little bit different, but there really is not much of a difference. So the main reason this is because our scene hasn't been textured in Blender yet. Blender doesn't know how to texture it or where to draw them from or any of that stuff. So that is why we downloaded the MCPrep add-on, because we can simply go to this tab over here. My computer's being kind of slow right now, I apologize. And we have this Prep Materials button. So first of all, when we imported, I didn't click on anything else. So the whole scene, everything that we imported, being they're all separate objects and whatnot, so this could be tedious if you accidentally don't have everything selected. But if you left it alone, they're all selected by default. Otherwise, if you did accidentally deselect them, I'm going to hit the A key, and that's going to deselect everything. And when I hit it again, the A key, that's going to select everything. Unfortunately, that's going to select everything in our scene though, including our camera, but I'm pretty sure that shouldn't matter. As long as your scene is selected, then this is only going to affect the relevant objects and items. So the first thing I want to do before we click Prep Materials though, I want to set the world exporter to JMC to OBJ, which is what we used, as I'm sure you recall. And then we're going to click the Prep Materials button. So to recap that, everything in our scene is selected. The exporter is set to the program that we use, which is JMC to OBJ, and now we're going to click Prep Materials. And as you can see, our scene is now textured exactly how you would expect it to be. It looks just like it would in Minecraft. Let me zoom in a bit here. And as you can see, we have all this stuff going on. So one thing you may be wondering if you're new to Blender completely is how I'm navigating the scene here, how I'm doing all these movements and stuff. Well, first of all, I'm clicking in on my mouse scroll wheel. I highly recommend that you have a full-sized keyboard and a mouse to work with Blender. In any case, I'm just clicking in on the mouse wheel, and when I do that, I'm able to orbit the center of the object, or where the center of my view, and look around. If I do that while holding the Shift key, then I can pan left and right and around. And if I scroll, then I can zoom in. And if I, zoom in and out. And if I hold the Shift key while I scroll, then I can go up and down. If I hold the Control key while I scroll, then it'll go left and right. If I hold Shift and Control together while I scroll, then it will rotate. So if you recall, we had the option ticked for each object or each material being its own object. And as you can see here, when I click on the grass, then the grass becomes selected. If I click on the wheat, then all the wheat is selected. If I click on the cobblestone, then all of the cobblestone is selected, etc. So that's what that option did, and it allows us to do things. Like if I hit the H key, it's going to hide that, and it hides all of the cobblestone instances in our scene. If I hit the Alt H key, that's going to undo the hide. That's just kind of a little thing there. You don't have to worry too much about hiding things if you're not modeling, but just keep that in mind. There are a lot of shortcuts and hotkeys with Blender, so I recommend you try to get used to them as much as possible. I'm still not used to all of them, just some of the basic ones. Okay, so what we want to do now that we've got our scene imported, we want to customize our scene, and what we're going to do is put in a sun for a light. So I'm going to hit the number 7 key on my numpad, not the keys above the letters on your keyboard, the actual numpad. I'm going to hit that, and what that does is change the angle to the top view. And you don't necessarily have to do this. It's just kind of, the number 1 key goes to the front view, and I can bring that up. Number 3 goes to the side view. Number 7 goes to top view. There's probably more to that, but we'll hopefully get into that at a later time. That's just the basic way to interact with the program. So what I'm going to do is hit the Shift key and the A key, and that's going to bring up the Add menu. You can also, as you may recall, you can do that from over here. You can go to the Create tab, and then you have the Add menu and stuff like that. I'm just going to use the shortcuts because that's what I'm most familiar with for the most part. I'm going to go down here to Lamp, and I'm going to click Sun. Alright, so we brought in the sun, and you don't really see anything. Well, that's because it spawned on our cursor. That little thing there is our cursor, and wherever that is where new objects will spawn. Right now, that's not really an issue for us, so all I'm going to do is hit the G key on my keyboard and hit the Z key, and that makes it select the Z axis, and the G key means grab, so I'm grabbing the object, and it was selected because we just imported. Like once you first import something, it's automatically selected, so anything you press, like the G key to grab it, is going to grab that selection and bring it up. So this is our sun. When I hit the G key, it grabs it. As you can see, it turns white. If I hit the Z key, that means I can only move it up and down on the Z axis. If I hit the X key, then that means it will only move on the X axis. If I hit the Y key, it will only move on the Y axis. So that's just some basics of how you can move things. Or you can also use these little widgets or gadgets, whatever you want to call them, gizmos, I think they call them. And I can just click on this and drag it on whichever axis that I want, and it will move it like that. So you can just choose whatever works best for you. So the interesting thing about a sunlight, by the way, is it will shine on everything in the direction that you put it on, no matter where it is. Like the physical placement of the sun within the scene makes no difference. It could be under the scene, it could be way above or off to the side. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is this dotted line that is telling us which way the sunlight is shining. So I'm going to hit my R key, and I'm going to rotate it. And since I'm in the side view, I hit the number 3, and I'm in my side view. You can see here it says right persp, and perspective is for the type of view that we have, but the right means that's the angle we're looking at. If I hit the number 1 key, you'll see that it says front. If I hit 7, it says top. So I'm on the side view, meaning that it's going to rotate directly from this side, which is on the X axis. And that just means that I don't have to hit X if I don't want to. I can rotate it and it's only going to rotate on the X axis. If, however, I was off to the side here and I'm just looking at it like this, which is kind of difficult, but if I did, I could hit R and it would rotate kind of wonky, so I can hit the X key and then it would make it rotate only on the X axis. So the whole like X, Y, Z axes thing, it works for rotation, for moving things, whatever you happen to be doing. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball this and see exactly how I want it to look. So the sunshine is going to be kind of coming from an angle like that, and maybe I'm going to go to the top view and I'm going to rotate it perhaps to the side. So I want it kind of coming at an angle there. I'm also going to move it just so it's kind of out of the way of my scene. Go to the front view here and stuff. So see, I didn't bring down the maximum on our import, and I have that random little object up there, so we'll just try to ignore that for the time being. Anyway, so now we've got the light on our scene, and what I want to do, we could take a look at it real quick, but I already know there's a couple of things that I want to do to this before we change it. You have the size and you have the max bounce and whatnot. Generally, I leave most of this alone. I think the size you can bring up, it depends on what kind of shadows you want, and you have the strength. Now, generally, I'm going to just bump this up to say 2.5. I find that generally works okay, pretty well. So we'll go with that. In any case, let's go ahead and see if we can get a preview of our scene. I'm going to hit the 0 key on my keyboard, and what that does is takes you to the active camera in the scene. Fortunately, we only have one camera, so we don't have to worry too much about that. If I go to the side view here, though, by the way, I'm going to click on our camera. There we go. Zoom in on it a bit. All right, so I can do the same thing with the camera. I can hit the G key and drag it up, and I can hit the R key and rotate it. By the way, I am clicking right click to let go of it to not save the changes that I'm making. Sorry I didn't mention that earlier, but if I want to move the camera and I right click, it's going to cancel that movement. But if I want to save it, then I'm going to go and click left click. Of course, if you didn't follow along with me changing the settings to select with left click, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it will be the same for you here. I don't think it reverses the right click, left click on accepting your movements like that, but just keep that in mind in case for whatever reason it doesn't work for you. But as far as I know, right click will cancel a movement and left click is going to accept it. So we're just going to do that. And what I'm going to do is hit the 0 key and go into our view. As you can imagine, positioning the camera like that is kind of wonky and you know, not exactly precise in a lot of ways. So there's a few ways to do things, but one of the easiest ways I've found is if you're in the camera view, you hold the Shift key and then hit the F key, F as in freedom. And then you'll see that you get this little crosshair here, and what it does is basically turn the camera into a first-person view, and we can use the WASD keys and the mouse to look and move around just as you would in a game or in Minimator. And I can hit the E key and the Q key and it goes down. I can hit the E key and it goes up. And I think if I look at something and press the space key, it'll make me jump to that selection. If you're just flying around and you want to make it quicker than what it is, then you can hold the Shift key and that makes the camera fly a bit faster. Very similar to Minimator if you're used to that. So what I'm going to do is just go over here, and when I have the camera angled and positioned the way I want to, I'm going to just left click, and that's going to accept and select the change that we made. And I'm just going to hit the F12 key to render out our frame here to see what it is we're working with. So as you can see, we have our render now, and alternatively, you can go to the render tab here and click on the render button, which would do the same thing as this. The F12 key is just the hotkey for that. So here's our scene, and it doesn't look too bad, but I think there's a little bit more of an improvement that we can make to that. So I'm going to hit the escape key, and that's going to take me back into our view, and I'm just going to rotate out of our camera so I can select something else, and I'm going to click on our sun, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a yellow tint, so that we get a little bit more realistic kind of look. I haven't really determined exactly what color yellow I go with. I always just kind of eyeball it until I get the look that I want. So with that selected, I'm going to now render again. So as you can see, that gives us a little bit more realistic result. We have a little bit more of a hue to it, some orangeness and whatnot, which is what you would probably want from a sunlight instead of this white, clean light. Of course, it depends on your scene, but for an outdoor scene like this, that's what I'm going to go with. So if that's what you're doing, then that's what I recommend. Give your sun a slight yellow hue. For reference here, for this particular one that I have, I don't know if it's the best color to go with, but the hex value is FFF 7DD. Alright, so enough of that tedious stuff, so we want to go ahead and finish up our scene. So one thing I'm going to do is go to the World tab over here, and you may notice in our render that we had that ugly gray background that we have here. Well, I'm going to click on Use Nodes under the World tab. I don't really know if you have to do this in order to get the effect that we're going for, but it kind of just sets you up a little bit better. And I'm going to click on the color here, and I'm going to drag up the brightness. I'm going to bring it probably all the way up, I guess, and I'm going to give us somewhere around here, this hex value, like this is just me eyeballing it, so don't take this as the gospel, but 96C1FF is our hex value that I'm randomly going with here. I'm also going to just nudge down the strength of our world here, because what it is this light, since it's a bright world setting, or actually not a light, the background here, since it's a brighter setting, it actually is going to cast light. That's due to the Cycles rendering engine. It's going to cast light onto our scene, and I don't know if I want it to affect it as much as my sunlight, so I'm just going to bring that down. This is something that is subjective, and you can play with it and get the values that you want, but that's what I'm going to go with. So we've basically got our scene set up, but there's a couple of other things that we need to do. And one, this is optional, but this will also show you another way to import things into Blender. And that is, if you downloaded the Denise, someone told me how to pronounce it. I think that's what it was. Or Denise? I don't remember. Anyway, if you downloaded that and you have his Cycles pack, then you can import certain blocks that he's already created. So what I'm going to do is go to File. I'm going to go down here to Append. And when I click on that, I'm going to navigate to where I saved that file. Alright, so I'm in the Cycles Minecraft rig from Denise or whatever. So what I'm going to do is go to the blocks rig here, and I'm going to select that, and then it's going to take us into this, and I'm going to go down to the object folder, and here you have all of the different objects and blocks within Minecraft that are included in that pack. So for this example, I'm going to import the clouds block. So we're going to find out where it is, and it's right there. I'm going to click on clouds, and I'm going to go over here to append from library. And as you can see back in Blender, we have these clouds here, and they're obviously rather low, and as you may recall, they're automatically selected because that's what we imported into the scene. And I can take them and click on them and drag them up like this, or however I want to do it. And then you have these perfectly set up, already ready to go clouds. Now there are ways to expand this, because you may be like, well, there's only this one little block of clouds. What if I want a big scene? We'll try to get to that maybe at a later point, but for now, let's just cover the basic scene that we have here. Alright, so we've got our clouds, we've got our scene, we've got our light set up, we even have our world background. And now we may want to have a character. So you can download rigs and import them in similar fashion the way we did the clouds, but if you want to stick to the simplest way to do that, which is pretty much what we're aiming to cover for this tutorial series, then you're going to use your MCPrep add-on. So what I'm going to do is bring our 3D cursor up to this level, and the way I'm going to do that is to right-click. For you, it may be left-click if you didn't follow the change that we made in the preferences in the first episode. But anyway, we want our character to spawn in here, so I'm going to bring the 3D cursor up right here. That looks about where I want it. You may have to finagle with it, but looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to come over here to the MCPrep add-on. I'm going to scroll down to player mobs, and we have Steve. I'm just going to click on Steve. And as you can see, we bring in Steve, and he looks pretty weird. And as you can see, we are in the material view, and he still looks weird. So while he's still selected, I'm going to click on Prep Materials, and there he is. He gets his skin, and we're good to go. Alrighty, so you may notice that Steve's kind of not in the best position and whatnot, but we're going to get to that at a later time. This tutorial's gone on long enough. So let's go back to our camera and see if we can get a look at what we did here. So I hit the O key, or the 0 key on my numpad to go to my camera. And we hit the Shift F key to go into the first person view. I'm going to aim at Steve, and I'm going to hit the space key, and that's close enough. It's kind of tedious or touchy. So I'm going to bring that up, and I'm just going to kind of aim at Steve. Let's see if we can get some of the sky in the background. Maybe we get a low angle here so we can see some of the clouds that we imported. I don't know. We'll go with something like that, and let's see what our render looks like. Alright guys, so as you can see, we've got our picture, and we've got our scenery imported, we've got the textures laid out, we've got our clouds in the sky, we've got Steve sitting there looking wonky as he could be, and all is right in the world. We've got our background changed. That's probably not the exact color I would want to leave it, but it really depends on the time of day and all that kind of stuff. But there's also more customizations we can make to that we'll hopefully get to in a later time. You may notice that some of these like bright spots up here and some of this oddly reflecting grass on the cobblestone here and whatnot. All these things can be changed and fixed, but hopefully we'll get to that in a later on part or another tutorial sometime after this series is done. In any case, now that we've got our scene set up, let's go ahead. I actually had to come back to this view, so I can't hit the escape key because I went into this. You have this button down here that allows you to go to all the different views that Blender has, and we're just going to go back to the 3D view, which is where we need to be to work on stuff. So that's a little extra tip there. And now that we've got our scene set up, we're going to go ahead and save it. So I'm going to click on File. I'm going to go to Save or Save As. If you have already saved before, then you can just click on Save. But we haven't saved this yet, so I'm just going to click on that, and it's going to ask me to just start from the beginning. So I'm going to go to our tutorial folder, and I'm just going to call this Blender tutorial. I guess it's probably a good name, and it'll be .blend, and I'm gonna click Save Blender File. Alrighty, so now that we've got that, we've got it saved and good to go, that's going to be it for this tutorial, guys. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something. I hope it wasn't too wonky, and sorry if it was too wordy and lengthy again, but I'm just hoping to try and cover all of the basics in a comprehensive way, so I hope you appreciate that. In any case, that's going to be it for me, so thanks for joining me, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe to become a citizen today. If you want to support me more directly and help out the channel and all this kind of stuff and encourage me to do more videos like this and whatnot, feel free to check out the Patreon link in the description. But otherwise, that's going to be it for me. So thanks for joining me, guys, and I will see you in the next video.